Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm taking a look at a new game called Agatha Christie Death on the Nile. This game was released on Steam on September 25th, 2025. I'm playing this just before it comes out, so I don't know the price, but there's another game, another Agatha Christie game called Murder on the Orient Express, which came out in 2023. Its regular price is $45 Canadian, so I'm gonna guess this will probably be pretty much exactly the same. I'll, do some sort of update if that's completely wrong, but I imagine it'll be pretty close. It's developed by Microids Studio Lyon and published by Microids. And as you could probably guess from the title, if you're familiar with Agatha Christie, this is an adventure detective mystery game starring one of her very famous characters, Hercule Poirot. No, I actually did not even know there were these Poirot games available. Because I've played this, I'm now interested in playing the Murder on the Orient Express game. That's probably her most famous story, I assume. But I am actually very familiar with Agatha Christie's work. Both my parents were big fans of her books, so I've read quite a few of them myself. I've watched a lot of episodes of Miss Marple, if anyone's familiar with that show. And yeah, I've seen a couple of the Poirot movies with old Kenneth Branagh, good actor. But this was a story I wasn't familiar with, so I was very, very interested in checking this out. At the time of recording, I've played 7.6 hours. There was probably a little bit of idle time in there, so yeah, probably like 7.5 hours altogether. And in that time, I finished the prologue, obviously, and the first 5 chapters. And from like the pacing of the game, I definitely assumed there would only be, not too many more than 5 chapters, like 6 or so. But if my snooping through the game files is correct, and I think it is, there are 11 chapters altogether. Now the 11th chapter might be kind of an epilogue or like a roundup or something, but yeah, there's 11 chapters according to the game files. After you complete each chapter, it gives you a little roundup of your stats, and the one that's most helpful to me was how much time I spent in the chapter. And for the most part, they were all about 70 minutes, so just over an hour per chapter. One of them was like 110 minutes, so that was almost 2 hours. So yeah, you're looking for between an hour and 2 hours per chapter. So yeah, you're probably looking at about 20 hours altogether to finish the whole story, which is pretty good value, I'd say. I should say that although I did mention Hercule Poirot, you are not only playing as Poirot. The chapters are split into a Poirot chapter, and then in the next chapter you play as Detective Jane Royce. And the two characters meet in the prologue, and then they go their separate ways and start investigating different cases. But as the Steam page, I was going to say alludes to, but straight up says, the two of them will solve 2 connected mysteries. So as you're playing through the chapters, you'll start seeing things you recognize from maybe Jane Royce's case in your Poirot case, and you're like, oh yeah, there's a bit more to these, seemingly separate cases than it appeared. And yeah, I believe I'm pretty close to the two of them meeting. It's gonna happen pretty soon. Like I said, I've just played the first 5 chapters. Basically, my review email said, you can't share anything beyond the first 4 chapters at the embargo date, which we're well past at this point anyway, and also preferably don't show anything past chapter 5 on the release date. I stuck to that. I recorded the first 3.5 chapters. I guess I recorded the prologue, the first 3 chapters, and about half of chapter 4, and then I just stopped recording because I didn't want, any spoilers in the video, really. So yeah, at the time of recording, I haven't even played half of the game, and the footage you're seeing is less than half of the game. As you'd imagine, this is a detective mystery puzzle solving game. For the most part, when you're playing as your detective, you're gathering evidence from talking to people. You can search the crime scenes. For example, the prologue was that, the mystery in the prologue was that one of the characters, a man, was going to propose to his girlfriend. But when he went to propose, the ring box was empty, the ring was missing. And that's your prologue case, is to find out what happened to the missing ring. So in order to do this, you interview, the man who was going to propose, his girlfriend, anyone who would have been in on the plan for him to propose, like the owner of the club, the bartender, and you can also go check out the crime scene, the office and the safe where the ring was being stored. And as you interview your suspects or just any of the characters and find evidence and gather clues, you start putting together this mind map, which you can access, and looks kind of overwhelming at first, but it really is just a way of storing all your information, which is very, very helpful. And I guess just before I get into the mind map too much, I should say that there are 3 difficulties you can play on. The first is story mode, which I think just kind of holds your hand through the whole thing. I don't think you actually have to do very much of the puzzle solving yourself at all. I think it's if you literally just want to experience the story of the death of Nile, which is a fine way to play the game. There's also detective mode, which is the medium, normal mode. That's the one I played on, and that lets you solve all the puzzles yourself, but it also gives you hints on the mind map. It'll show like little branching paths from the central mystery, and one of them might be like a picture of a text box or like a dialogue bubble, and looking at that you can deduce, oh, there's someone I haven't talked to, or there's something I haven't talked to someone about yet that I need to do. But also, if that little bubble isn't quite helpful enough for you, you can hover over it, hold E, and it'll reveal what you actually have to do. And it'll be like, talk to this character because maybe you missed them or something. And then the last difficulty is, I can't remember what it was called, it was like expert or something. And that one's like, yeah, there's no hand holding. I don't think the game even keeps track of like the evidence you're collecting, so it's like if you want to solve the puzzles on your own, which I did not want to do. The middle one was perfect for me because it really does let you try and solve everything yourself. You gather all the evidence yourself, try and figure out what you're going to do next, but it will also point you in the right direction if you are stumped, which did happen to me a few times. So once you've gathered enough evidence in your mind map, it'll start letting you make links, connections between different pieces of evidence that you've picked up. And it'll tell you if you've got like a link available or 2 links available. And you can link, just corresponding pieces of evidence. I just had to scrub through my footage to find a good example, but one of them was like a piece of evidence I had was that the ring was stored in this character's safe. And another piece of evidence I'd gathered was that the ring was no longer in its box when the character took it out of the safe. And so then you connect those 2 pieces of evidence, and you can then lead to a deduction. It gives you 3 choices, and you can figure out that the ring must have been stolen while it was still in the safe. That's just a very basic example from the tutorial, and yeah, you do a lot of these little connections and links, and they're quite satisfying when you know exactly how they're going to go together. You'll also be solving puzzles, some of which are optional, some of which are required to progress the story. And the puzzles are interesting. Some of them are very, very obtuse, and I'm sure they make perfect sense to the person who made up the puzzles, but a lot of them I was completely stumped. And luckily, there is a hint system, which you're completely free to use. It'll just tell you in your stats at the end of a chapter, like how many hints you used, how many mistakes you made, things like that. But I was totally okay with using hints because yeah, some of the puzzles were just so complicated, couldn't figure them out. Luckily, the hints are very, very useful. And for most of the puzzles, there's 3 hints, and like the first hint is, it might give you a hint on the first step you should take for a puzzle, or it'll give you like a very vague hint on how the puzzle works. Second one, will be closer to the solution, and then the third hint will be the actual solution. And sometimes I would like look at the first 2 hints and I'd be like, no, this isn't anything. Look at the solution, I'd be like, I would never have worked that out myself. So yeah, I'll be very interested to see if they had the same puzzle style in Murder on the Orient Express, because I found some of the puzzles so difficult in this game. But it was kind of okay because the hints were there to save me, but it would have been nice to figure out the puzzles myself. The entire game is voice acted, which is a good thing and a bad thing. There are 3 voice language options. You can have all the dialogue, all the spoken dialogue in English, French, or Dutch. Even though everything is voiced in all these languages, the English voice acting isn't incredible. Poirot is very good, Jane Royce is okay, and kind of the rest of the characters are somewhere between good and bad. So some of the more prominent characters you encounter multiple times or like through different chapters are pretty good. But yeah, a lot of the minor characters are just god-awful. Sorry. There was this one part in one of Jane Royce's chapters. She was in like these, dark streets of New York. And there's like this guy who looks super tough. I don't know, he's, scowling. He's got like this like denim jacket and stuff. I was like, whoa, this guy's pretty tough. He's dangerous. And then just the second he talks, like the air of danger is completely gone because he literally just sounds like a nerdy guy.
Well, Will? You don't say hello to friends anymore?
But yeah, a lot of the minor characters are very, very bad, unfortunately. So I did play around with different voice languages at the start. I started it on English once I realized the voice acting wasn't amazing. Switched it to French, and also tried Dutch. But because you do have to focus on all the dialogue and really take it all in, because you do have to try and solve mysteries with everything you're hearing and seeing, I ended up turning it back to English because I felt like it was only a matter of time before I just kind of like glazed over a line in French or something, and then had no idea what I was actually supposed to do. So I left it on English, even though it wasn't great. The game is super stylish. I don't know how to describe the art style in this game, but it's a very similar art style to the one in Deathloop, which was also very, very stylish, very 70s, quite disco, I guess. People more familiar with artistic movements will, I'm sure, be able to pinpoint what kind of art style it is. I love it though, it looks great. Once you've gathered all the evidence and made all the possible connections, you're then able to solve the case. And in a lot of the cases, you basically get to like mind palace the crime scene throughout like all the stages of it. So in the example in the prologue, and I'm sure a lot of the footage is going to be from the prologue just to avoid spoilers, but in this one, you basically had the course of something like an hour, I think. And you had 6 or 7 different time periods in that hour, and you had to place all the characters in the right location and doing the right activity based on all the evidence you'd discovered. So for example, like one of the characters you'd interviewed was the bartender, who said he'd stayed at his post the whole night, but then you found out that he'd actually at one point had to take a bottle upstairs to someone, and even though he was only gone for like 10 minutes, he was still away from the bar, and so that was obviously quite a key moment. So during that time in the Mind Palace reenactment at the end, you place him like taking the order at the bar, and then like the next time chunk you have him going up the stairs, and then the next time chunk you've got him at the top of the stairs serving the customer. It's very, very clever, and it's very, very satisfying when you're like, yes, I know exactly who's meant to be here and where. Love it. So there you go, those are my thoughts on Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile after, how long did I say, 7.5 hours? 7.5 hours, just under half of the game. Really enjoying it so far. There's things I would change, I do wish the voice acting was better, but again, this is like presumably about a 20-hour game that is fully voiced, which is very, very impressive. It's fun, it's an Agatha Christie story I'm not familiar with, so I'm enjoying seeing where the mystery and story is going to go. The 2 different characters are quite nice. It's like a nice change of pace after a Poirot chapter to then go play as Jane Royce, and then back to Poirot again. If you like Agatha Christie and murder mysteries, you'll probably enjoy this. If you'd played the Murder on the Orient Express game, I'm sure you'll enjoy this as well. Like I said, this is the first one I played, but now I'm also interested in checking out the Orient Express game. There you go, that was Death on the Nile. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!